Is consolidating school districts the right answer for New Jersey? Find out next on Outlook Monmouth. Welcome to Outlook Monmouth. I'm Armen McOmber, your host. Does New Jersey have too many school districts? Certainly the governor and state legislature believe that it does. Over the past few years, they have enacted legislation to consolidate many of New Jersey's over 600 school districts and to eliminate those school districts which do not operate schools. Proponents of school consolidation argue that too many independent school districts lead to more spending and higher taxes. However, many citizens are concerned that the consolidation of school districts may hurt the quality of education and greatly curtail local control of schools. We're fortunate today to have with us Carol Morris, Executive County Superintendent of Schools, and Joe Passiment, Executive County School Business Administrator, both from Monmouth County, to discuss some of the issues and problems which must be addressed in school consolidation. So Carol, I think the first question I have is why school consolidation? Why now?
Well, we'd have to begin with the fact that the very first reason is because it was a law that was passed by the legislature in 2007 requiring that the county superintendents throughout the state and the Department of Education consolidate and look for ways to either regionalize, consolidate, merge services, address the question itself. And I would also think that right now, in 2 years later after the law, it's probably an issue that commands a greater interest than one might think because of the economic times that we're presently in.
So what do you see as the main benefits of school consolidation? Is it just about saving money?
No, it's not just about saving money. It's about the delivery of services to children. And the challenge of consolidation is just that. Can you save money and realize savings and still protect the integrity of the educational program? Or possibly would consolidation or a merger of some kind offer better services, more efficient services for school districts?
And I guess the question would be then, consolidation, what benefits could it have for education? And maybe that goes to both of you. Are there more services? Do larger school districts inherently have some benefits over smaller school districts?
Well, one of the things that we are taking a look at in the consolidation, as you said, is saving costs, and certainly combining school districts together will save some costs. But on the benefit side, for the educational side, when you combine school districts together, a small district that could not afford to offer certain programs now would have that opportunity because there's a greater student base. So that's one of the advantages. Technology would be another advantage because of the sophistication of the various school districts that we may consolidate. Transportation savings, special education. So there are a lot of areas that Carol and I are taking a look at in the consolidation of schools that would actually benefit schools.
What's the process? I mean, how will this work? I think there's a lot of questions out there about exactly how the schools will be consolidated, how much input the public will have, but exactly if you could explain how the process will go about happening.
Well, the law itself addressed the process when they required that the first phase of consolidation address the elimination of non-operating districts. And that has just been enacted. And in Monmouth County, we have 4 non-operating districts that will no longer be in existence. And the second phase will address the K-8 number of districts in the county. We have 31 that have to be, as the law requires, in some way merged or at least studied and looked at for recommendations to the commissioner from myself, addressing the status of those 31 districts and whether or not it's possible and beneficial for everybody to merge those into K-12 systems.
When you say non-operating districts, exactly what do you mean, and how many do we have, or did we have in Monmouth County?
We had 4. Mm-hmm. And by non-operating, we meant that they had they were designated as a school district. They had a functioning Board of Education. They made decisions. However, they did not have a school in and of the borough or community in which they represented.
And those have already been eliminated?
Yes, they have.
Do you know, what are the four?
Well, Seabright has just been formally eliminated, and that district will be merged with Oceanport. We have Lake Como, which eventually will be going to and being merged with Belmar. And then we have Interlaken and Allenhurst. And Joe and I are not ready yet to make the recommendation as to where they will go.
And I take it then that, from what you said, that at some point in the future, the intent of the legislature and the legislation is that there will be no K through 8 districts in New Jersey? That's
the intent of the way the legislation reads. Now, whether in reality that is possible or not for every K to 8 in the state is really something that only time will tell, because we're already seeing problems in addressing some of those 31 districts.
What kind of problems?
Well, let me use Freehold Regional High School District as an example. They are 9 to 12 regional, that if we were to merge them with all of the K to 8s that feed into that district, we would be looking at a district of close to 36,000 students, which certainly wasn't the intent of the law, and that in and of itself creates a lot of other problems. So we look at the elementary schools that feed in that are there now, and it's not reasonable to assume that we should look for another high school experience for them. So whether or not that's a district that would require, deregionalization of a high school, the creation of 36,000 students, it just doesn't look at this time as if it's even a feasible direction to go. So that then begs the question, do those districts remain K to 8 for the rest of the time?
And how exactly, or on what will you base this decision? It seems enormously complicated. I know there are feasibility studies.
It is very complicated.
That have been commissioned and things like that. But upon what are you going to base these recommendations?
The recommendation to the commissioner that's required from every county executive superintendent would be based on a number of different issues and factors. One certainly would be a feasibility study, as you've just alluded to, that's professionally done, not by us or the district itself, but an outside entity of some kind. And that really will encompass a tremendous amount of information that would offer the comparison that we would need when looking at it to say, this is something that really looks good for these districts involved, or it may tell us and the district this is not a good idea, and therefore this is not the direction in which to go. And formal regionalization, which is certainly one option, may not be the best option for all districts. So there are other possibilities that we would then redirect our attention to and consider.
And by that you mean consolidating some functions of schools and not others, or just not?
Yes, there's a possibility of sharing of services where two very, very small districts may not need 2 superintendents. They may not need 2 business administrators. We're already seeing that being done now, where districts are sharing administrative costs, and special education programs, transportation consolidations and jointures. Some of that we've already started. It's not certainly getting the attention that the subject is getting in the area of a formal regionalization, but some of those things are going on already.
We're kind of unique in Monmouth County in that we have the second largest number of school districts in the state of New Jersey, Bergen being first, Monmouth County being second. We have 51 operating districts, and as Carole said, 31 of those are K-8s. And the uniqueness of Monmouth County itself, the shore area, the interior area. So when Carole is looking at the various studies of combining school districts, we have to take geographical information, socioeconomic, educational opportunities for children, transportation issues, wealth, of the districts and wealth of the communities. So many of those factors have to come together before a formal regionalization study can be done.
Well, let me ask you, Joe, one of the principal concerns that you hear is that consolidation will lead to higher taxes for some people and maybe lower taxes for others. But how do you address the impact of regionalization on property taxes?
Okay, let's begin with the non-operating districts. In putting the non-operating district with an operating district, one of the major concerns that was, as you said, was the taxes that people would pay. And the whole idea was to make sure that this would be tax neutral, because you could never combine districts in such a manner that you would always get a winner and a loser. So in doing that combination, when you put districts together, and this is going to happen when we consolidate the rest of the districts in Monmouth County over the course of time, you take a look at the enrollments. You can either base the taxes upon 100% enrollment or 100% equalized value, or a combination thereof. And in our studies, we're taking a look at which combination best suits the district so the tax impact is not burdensome to both districts.
And that would be true of the debt burden as well.
The same thing that way, yes.
So it sounds like you're going to have to look at every single situation individually.
Oh, yes, yes.
And you have the flexibility to kind of make recommendations that are specific to the situation.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
And what about salary guides? How would that issue be addressed? Because a lot of times you hear, well, if school districts merge, whoever's paying more to teachers or paying more in benefits, we move to that guide. Is that something that you have the power to take a look at and address as well?
Well,
Yes.
yeah,
And that,
we do.
in some ways, is misleading, because the actual requirement is that it go to the largest district, whichever district has the larger population of employees.
For the first year, that salary guide is the guide you will use, and then you will adopt a new salary guide.
And so ultimately the catchword is, and what you're going to look at is tax neutrality, in essence, to be tax neutral on either of any of the districts that you're merging.
Yep.
We're going to take a short break. Please stay with us for more about public school consolidation here at Outlook Monmouth.
Prevention First is a nonprofit agency in Monmouth County that offers educational programs dedicated to strengthening the foundation of our children's lives. Please call 732-663-1800.
Turn it down. Lowering your thermostat just 1 degree can cool your heating cost by 3%. Answer the call.
This could be good. Hey, you.
Impossible.
When you open a book, you can explore new lands, meet new friends, and discover new adventures. There are amazing possibilities when you open your mind to reading. You can log onto the Library of Congress website and let the journey begin.
Hey, Zachary.
Ready?
You looking good? Great hit.
The odds of a child becoming a professional athlete are 1 in 16,000. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism, 1 in 166. The odds say it's time to listen. To learn the signs of autism, visit autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Outlook Monmouth. I'm your host, Armen McOmber. If you're just joining us, we're talking about school consolidation with Carol Morris, Executive County Superintendent of Schools, and Joe Passiment, Executive County School Business Administrator, both from Monmouth County. Carol, critical issue in school consolidation. How do you address issues of local control, downsized administration, and the possible increase in class sizes? These are things you you hear about when you hear about school consolidation that people are concerned about. Will consolidation adversely impact on education?
Well, the issue of local control is probably one of the biggest that we have to address. It has a long, deep-rooted history in New Jersey. It's not just in the educational area, it's in the local municipalities, police force, fire companies. You know, when you look at all of the duplication of all services in New Jersey of any kind, it immediately tells you, I'm sure, to an outsider how very, very strong local control is. And it's an emotional issue. We found it to be very emotional when we were out talking with people, boards of education, and the public. The only thing that we have urged them to do is to wait and look at the results of the feasibility studies, where we can look at the issue objectively, because many of the assumptions, and you've mentioned a couple of them, are not going to be necessarily proven when the studies are done. For instance, it does not automatically mean that class sizes are going to increase. In order to increase those class sizes, we would have to be closing buildings all over the county, and that does not look right now to be feasible at all. Most of our buildings are being used at complete capacity, and they would not be closed randomly just to be able to move students all over the county. That's not what we're looking at, what we're intending to do. So many of the assumptions and criticisms that are there are not valid in that respect. You'd have to look at the individual districts that are going to merge, what the plan for those particular districts is actually going to be, and whether or not it affects many of the existing conditions that are already there in that school. For instance, just recently I was at a district that was the parents very, very upset over the possibility of their students having to ride a bus because they've never been bused. Well, that's not necessarily an automatic result of merging the districts. They may still go to that neighborhood school, and if they live in that community, they may not ever have to get on a bus. On the other hand, there are school children all over the county that have never done anything but ride a bus. And so, those are individual, unique situations we have found in most districts that exist that create some of the immediate resistance to this idea.
Right. And we have to get over the preconceived notion that automatically combining School A and School B together means one of those districts loses their schools.
Well, and that is the thought.
Not right, and that's not the case. And also, when you combine school districts together, there are some advantages. There are athletic programs that may be advantageous now because you have a greater population. Extracurricular activities, advanced courses, technology. So there are a variety of things. As we said in the earlier segment, we're taking a look at every aspect of the educational programs that are out there when we're looking to combine school districts. Yes, are there going to be some savings in administration? The answer is yes. If you combine two districts together, you don't need two central office administrations any longer. So yes, there will be some savings in that regards.
There's a fear, though, that no matter what, some of these smaller neighborhood schools where kids can walk to school, they're used to having access to the superintendent at a moment's notice, or the principal at a moment's notice, that these things are going to end. That as part of a K-12 district, some of their neighborhood schools are going to be merged, closed, and they're going to lose that type of personal attention that they're used to in smaller districts in a neighborhood school. How do you address that concern? I mean, again, it's probably an assumption, but there is that assumption that when you become part of a larger district, you're going to lose some personal attention.
Well, I think that that is an issue. That we would be certainly remiss not to realize that that's out there. But I think that in the end result, what has to occur is that once a study is done, it is our hope that the study will prove that the advantages greatly outweigh the disadvantages to some type of a merger. It's very nice to have a neighborhood school that's been in place and in that neighborhood for many, many years. I know people are comfortable with it. They're very relaxed and feel, as you said, that it's accessible. But on the other side of that, the educational component that is so necessary today to prepare our youngsters for tomorrow and the world in which they're going to live is going to override some of those things. You know, if for instance, let me give you an example. If it's going to be, if there's going to be a time in our nation when our students become bilingual, then a school of 100 students or 200 students is going to be missing out if they're not able to financially support a language program. And by merging two schools, it may well be that for the first time, those students not only get a language K-8, but get the choice of maybe 2 languages in their elementary careers. So there are going to be advantages to mergers that I would hope eventually people would be able to endorse, as opposed to simply saying, I think I'll go one step further with this, if you'll permit me. I think that more than having access to just the local school and feeling comfortable, the underwriting issue in schools today, as it should be, is my child going to be safe? So the safety issue of what happens to my child who no longer has this environment but now is going to have this environment is much bigger than I think people had anticipated that it would be.
Well, there's always resistance to change. I mean, New Jersey's been talking about consolidating school districts for a long time, and there's always going to be opposition to change. How do you combat that? And with that, people have neighborhood schools, they have small districts, and when you combine them with larger districts, you're bringing in a host of other issues, whether they be socioeconomic, whether they be, let's say what it is, race, and you have more diversity perhaps in a district than people are used to. How do you combat those types of perceptions or those types of fears?
Well, first of all, we have to go back to the fact that this is a law. The legislature passed a law in New Jersey, and unless that law is in some way altered or rescinded or addressed in another way, it is the law that the K-8 districts in New Jersey within a reasonable time will no longer and should no longer exist. So we have to go back to the fact that whether someone is resisting it or not, it's just like any other law that's passed. You resist paying taxes, but you end up paying them because it is the law. And I suspect that within time, it's going to be, people are going to be encouraged because there are going to be all kinds of other incentives that they're going to be looking at. Being able to afford to live in New Jersey is a big factor. And if people do not live in New Jersey or cannot pay taxes in New Jersey, then even these small neighborhood schools that we're presently looking at are not going to be able to survive. So it's almost a survival issue that comes into play with these districts as well, in terms of how long can the local resident of that district, I'll use Deal as an example. Deal is under 100 students, and they only have about 30 students of their own. Others are tuition students. Now, if these tuition students next year or the year after no longer go to Deal or wish to go to Deal, that's a district that are the residents there really going to endorse paying and running and operating an entire school for 30 students?
Right.
Let me ask you this. Right now, the law requires a referendum so that the voters of each district that will be consolidated or merged will have a decision to make whether
In a formal regionalization,
in
yes.
a formal regionalization. And yet we have a law requiring the merger of school districts into K-12 districts. What happens when voters, and I think invariably you're going to have this situation now and then, vote down the recommendations of the proposed merger? Then what?
As the law states right now, that then tells the legislature that it's not going to happen, that this is not a merger through a regionalization that's going to take place. Now, that's when, on a personal basis, professionally as well, but personally, I see the ball go back to the legislature, because if the legislature passed the law, you now have residents and voters telling you that the process has taken place, we don't want it. I can't predict what the legislature will do, but that certainly is a question that has been raised at every forum that we've talked at and every time we've met with boards and others.
Now, the consolidation law was passed before the economic downturn.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say. Is
Yeah.
And so now we're in a unique situation where people are really struggling. And never before had we had the opportunity to consolidate school districts because there wasn't a law in place. Now there is this law. And going forward, we're going to be very careful of how we consolidate the districts because of the economy that's out there. People no longer can afford the kinds of taxes. And we all know that the vast majority of your taxes go to the school. So
and even if there's an economic turnaround, do you think this process is inevitable?
I do in some in many respects.
Yeah.
Other states have looked to this. There are many states, as you I'm sure know, that already have county systems. They're not small local districts like we have in New Jersey. And Maine has just addressed the issue. Pennsylvania did it several years ago. So we're not blazing a new trail. So
Right. Well, you have a difficult road ahead and a lot of work before you. But I'd like to thank you both for helping us to address the issue and coming here today. That's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for Outlook Monmouth. Thank you very much.